All right. So I've been praying a lot the last handful of days. My own prayer life has really kicked into high gear. A lot of movement there, a lot of praying with scripture, a lot of insights, and then meeting with people in my spiritual direction. There's just been a lot of movement here. And this particular topic that I put up, Satan is real and he's active right now. It's almost like God has been ripping the veil off to help me see so much more clearly. And in my own experience, right? And the first thing that I put on there is Satan is real. And this is something that in our day and age, in our culture, we don't believe. What we've been fed by the world, right, is The Exorcist. It's pea soup, head spinning, levitation, all this crazy things that are so rare, right? But they're crazy, like almost unbelievable. They happen, but it's extremely rare. But that's what the world chooses to focus on. And the reason for that is because then it becomes unbelievable, right? That's not Satan's active work on a daily basis. Once again, that's something really rare. What his real work is taking control of this thing. It's deceiving our mind. It's getting us to think and believe in certain ways and act upon those beliefs and thoughts in ways that lead us to division, discord, chaos, violence, hatred, desolation, despondency, sadness, depression, fear, anxiety, all this kind of stuff, right? That's what he's actually doing. You know, this really crystallized for me last night. My son was brushing his teeth in the bathroom, and I was sitting there looking at him, and we were talking a little bit, kind of weird, as he was brushing his teeth, and it really occurred to me how tender he is. Jesus says, be as a little child, right? He says, be as a little child. And I started thinking about that as I'm looking at my son. And he's just so kind. Like, he's awesome. It doesn't mean he's perfect, right? He's an 8-year-old boy. He torments his sisters whenever he can get away with it and everything else. He's rough when he wrestles. I mean, all kinds of stuff. He's not perfect. But what came to mind is, do you know how many times I've had to go to my son and say, Thaddeus, I was wrong for X, Y, and Z? Usually something along the lines of being impatient, disciplining too harshly, or something like that, or being on my phone or something of that nature. You know what he does every time? It's okay, Dad. Don't worry about it. I love you. Like, will you forgive me? He's like, oh, yeah. And here's the thing. He actually has. Like, he has forgiven me. He's not, I can tell when somebody hasn't, right? And he has. He's not upset anymore. He's actually okay with it. Man, I've been praying every day for 14 years, and I'm not at that place, right? Where I'm that innocent. I'm not innocent as a dove like Jesus says to be, to where I can just live that way. And what it got me thinking was this, is that Jesus says the ruler of this world is coming soon. This world is ruled by Satan, right? Adam and Eve gave it over to Satan at the fall. And they did so by listening to Satan's voice, Satan's will, and kneeling before him and doing his will instead of the Father, therefore submitting everything that was under their control to their new God, which was Satan essentially. Because God had given them the world to steward. He'd given it to Adam to steward, to manage, right? Be fruitful, multiply, tend, care for the place. So Adam gave it to Satan. And Jesus says he's the ruler of this world, the prince of the power of the air. So here's Satan, who now rules this world, right? He runs it. And Jesus, this is why Jesus says, be in the world, but not of the world. So much of what we call maturity is just being shaped by the world. It's actually a devolving of who we're created to be. Right? How many people do you know in their 30s, 40s, 50s, say late 30s, 40s, and 50s? I'm in my 40s, so I see this. I've experienced it too in my own life. How many people do we see that are mature, but what they actually are is they're more hardened up by life experiences. They've been hurt more. There's been more pain. and they're just gruffer and harsher, and they don't look at the world the way they should. And we call it maturity, right? There's a difference between responding to the pains of life like that and hardening up with the experience of all those things, or say being like Mother Teresa, John Paul II, St. Teresa of Avila, pretty much any of the saints who've been through their own set of trials and circumstances, yet they're tender, they're open, they're receptive. You can tell you're loved when you're in their presence. They're two different things. And so this is the thing that keeps coming to mind is like, man, I've been homeschooled in the wrong school. This is Satan's kingdom. This is why Jesus broke in, right? In Luke, I believe it's in the Gospel of Luke, when the shepherds look up, when Jesus is born, and there's the host of the heavens, the heavenly host is coming down too. Dr. Ted Shree talks about how that is the angel armies accompanying Jesus as he's breaking into this world, right, to take it back. And it's on the cross that he disarms the principalities and powers of darkness. And what does he do? He does it by living sinless, by being patient, by being kind, by never losing sight of who we are and who we're created to be, right? And in the face of violence and pushback and death, he dies, but he lived it out wholly, so he rises again, because the wages of sin is death, but he never sinned, so the Spirit never left him. So when he died, the Spirit raised him from the body, or raised his body from the dead, right? This is what I'm seeing in our culture right now, right? It's this mass deception. There is so much going on there. There's so much anger and violence and hardness of heart, right? I look at my son and see this, and look at people out there, myself included, and what a difference there is. Like, what God wants for us is to peel back this garbage to be who he originally created us to be. Like, the more we live in this world, the more we engage in the world's ideas and the world's ways and the world's manners, the world's just manner of looking at things, the worse we become. You know, the other thing that came to mind in talking about Jesus there on the cross is Martin Luther King, right? You know, they had two routes that they could go when they were dealing with abuse, abusive police, abusive authorities, and things like that. They could go the route that people have gone today, which is to fight, right? And to be angry and to retaliate. And not saying they shouldn't, in the sense of I understand why one would do that. Every time I look at what's happening in the culture, it arises in my heart, and I have to pray about it, right? So I can get my own heart in order here. But that's one response that's understandable. But what it doesn't do is reveal the evil. What Jesus did revealed the evil around him, even to some of the people standing there. They're like, he's praying for us. He's praying for everybody who's crucifying him. He forgives the good thief right then and there. He's patient and kind to the bad thief, right? Like, in the face of all that, Jesus never changed. He just was who he was, and he loved in the midst of his current situation. Well, Dr. King, one of the things that was pointed out in a video I was watching is that they needed the spectacle, right? Black Lives Matter needs the spectacle, right? The spectacle is the thing that everybody sees, so you can kind of see the truth of it. But what Dr. King did, which was so gospel-centered, is he said, in the midst of this spectacle, we're not going to harm anybody else. We're going to be the ones getting harmed. So they let themselves get beat. They let themselves get hurt. And now, how many years later, 40 years, 50 years later, virtually everybody, short of really extreme prejudiced people, all recognize Dr. King as an amazing man. Why? Because he laid down his life, and what it did to lay down his life was expose the evil. It exposed the police. It exposed the authorities, right? And the reason is because in the midst of light, the darkness will be lit up. All the garbage you'll see. And so he's hard at work right now, and he's trying to get us to harden up. He's trying to keep us in a place where we will react. I had somebody ask me, how do we navigate these situations presently, right? And they asked me to do a speaking engagement on it. I don't know if I will yet or not, but the main thing is to live the truth. Jesus says the truth will set you free, right? The truth. Nothing else is the truth. Why? Because there's deception at the bottom of every single thing that's demonic. There are so many people deceived out there that we need the truth. And it doesn't just mean speaking it. Like, we have to take responsibility as Christians, right? Here at some level. I'm not saying that we caused this, but here's the thing that we need to be purified of, the thing we need to grow in. We have typically reduced Christianity to being nice and being a socially upstanding citizen, and we call that Christian. We get along well with others, and we do what we're supposed to do, right? And we have manners and everything else. None of those things are bad. But that's kind of what Christianity has been reduced to in America, right? Anybody can be that. I know pagans who are more mannered, decent, and better than many Christians I know. Like, that title doesn't mean anything, because being a Christian is so far beyond that. Being a Christian is to reveal the light, right? If you look at the Sermon on the Mount, the Beatitudes, those aren't things that you just go do, and they're not just being nice and being good, right? What they are is being completely transformed into a supernatural person. It is supernatural to look at somebody with no anger. Yet that's what Jesus calls us to. Like, he's not playing games in there. We can literally not have anger when we see somebody. Jesus didn't, right? We can actually love our enemies and bless them and serve them with a heart and a mind of love. Not white knuckling it, trying to, right? As Christians, this has not been the core of our faith. Sorry, email came up. This has not been the core of our faith. The core of the Christian life is divinization. It's holiness. It's to become one with him and like him. It's to receive the Spirit of the Lord so deep in our heart that the filament in there, our soul, just lights up like a light bulb in the midst of a dark world, right? Love radiates, just radiates. It happens. It's not something we try to do. I don't try to be patient and kind to somebody. If I do, but if I'm in a place where I'm trying to be patient and kind, I'm not transformed. And that's a dead giveaway that I need to come to Jesus. Because Jesus isn't trying to be loving. He is love. God is love. And you and I can become love. Right? Anybody who prays and really grows in the spiritual life, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. Because over time, you become more and more of love. Less and less things every day irritate me about my wife. Less and less things every day irritate me about the world and other people and the situation I'm in. And that's what real freedom is, right? That's the freedom that's needed to be who Jesus was in the face of the cross, in the face of turmoil, in the face of persecution, in the face of all this. That's what the saints are. They're so united to him and so filled with his love, and they become his love, that they just don't see the situation the same anymore. That's why Jesus can say, oh, they took your coat, give them your cloak too. Like, if 10 years from now, say all this stuff goes down the toilet, and a mob comes and attacks you and wants to steal your stuff and take your purse and your jacket and your backpack or whatever it is you have, would you take off your shoes and be like, here you go, why don't you go ahead and take these too? That's what he says to do, right? It's that kind of love. It's that kind of trust in the Father's care for us. So not living that out, what happens? We create families that act right and they're mannered and everything else, but they're not saturated with this spirit and with this love. The other thing that came to me in my prayer yesterday morning, probably in I want to say February-ish, January, February, when I was at Mary, I was praying one morning, and I listened to this country song that my wife likes. I hate country, but there's this one song she liked, and it came up in my prayer, so I popped in my headphones and listened to it. I was sitting in the chapel. It was like 5 o'clock in the morning, so nobody else was in there. Put my headphones in. I'm listening to this song, and I could feel it coming. Like, Matt, you're going to have waterworks coming here pretty quick. And so I got back to my room, so it's in a little more appropriate setting to pray in this capacity. And all of this stuff poured out, all this pain surrounding the reality that all I really desired as a child was to have my parents love one another. Like, I look at my kids now, and any time Demetra and I are affectionate or loving to one another, right, somebody usually comes up and wants to be right involved in it. Like, we desire love. It's the deepest desire of the human heart, to be within a loving communion. And that day, when I was up there praying, I was just a mess. And I was like, oh my God, I didn't realize how much I wanted that, how much I needed that. Well, fast forward to yesterday, as I'm continuing to pray, and this is how it works, right? Like, that was revealed to me back in January. So here we are in mid-July, and I'm still praying with that. It's not like I prayed with it every day since then, but I'm still praying with that. And a further development, like, I grew up in a void of love. A void of love. Imagine an empty bowl, right, that should be filled with love, and it's empty, and I'm sitting right in the middle of it, right? I was right in the middle of that bowl, empty, no love. Sometimes it was like this toothache I have right here. I need a root canal, and I have to wait till Wednesday. And I get reminded every day that I should have dealt with this back in January, right? It's just throbbing. So sometimes I'm either in this empty spot, this void, or I was in an open nerve. And that's what my life was like. Not being saturated in love, in this true love, the love of the Spirit, the selfless gift of one to another, created all the space for the world to raise me. It created the space for the world to get its hooks in me. Nobody around. So what did I watch growing up? Miami Vice. What did I end up doing? Drugs. Lots of them. Right? There was, I'm not saying it's Miami Vice's fault, right? But all these ideas came in from the world. Romance. And what did I do? I was a serial relationship person. Right? There were so many things there. But in the end, our Christian culture here has been devoid of this authentic, true love in large part. Of course, not everybody. And please don't take this as a condemnation, because in no way do I feel condemning right now, condemned or anything else. But I think it's a fact that we have to acknowledge. And so without being saturated in this, we're open to the world. And that's really what it is. It's not just more information. It's that knowing Him, being absorbed in Him, being with Him, that keeps our children from being open to the garbage that is not Him. Right? A guy on here who I follow, who runs a Catholic homeschooling program and it's classical liberal arts. He wrote a post recently about this, and he said, you can give everything to your children, faith and everything else, but in the end, they have to encounter Him. They have to build a relationship. And we've done a lot of teaching and sometimes provided all the structure and all the rules and everything else, but the Spirit is the one thing that they haven't caught. And that is the one thing that shields us from the fiery darts, right? The shield of faith, Paul says in Ephesians 6, it's that. So right now, I think that's exactly what's happening here. Like, we have knowingly, unknowingly, whatever it is, for those of us who've been around for some time, have not engaged this in the way that we should. Many times it's out of ignorance, it's unknowing, right? There aren't too many lights running around who are really anointed, who really get it. I've experienced that in my own life, right? And so without that there, not seeking after Him in the way that we should have been, not raising our children the way we should have been, maybe not even knowing out of ignorance, this is kind of the end result, right? Pressures come in. People don't understand Christianity. They're like, well, why? What does it matter if it's a family here or two dudes or two women or what? Like, it doesn't matter. It's no different. And they're not wrong. The statistics are no different for marriages. So why would they think anything different? They're not seeing marriages in the Lord. They're not seeing Christ's own love for his church over here, which is the ministry of marriage, right? So the joy or the hope in all of this, though, is that God has taken the world back. This is his world again. He has defeated and disarmed the evil one. And the same thing he did on the cross will happen here. Those who are lit up like Christmas trees will start to become brighter and brighter and brighter and brighter the darker all this gets. And all of those who are truly hungering and longing for the Lord will see those lights more and more clearly. And they'll come and they'll receive from those lights. And all the rest will fall away, right? And this is what happens during persecution. It's a purification. Like, isn't it annoying that there's 9,000 books on prayer out there and you don't know which one to actually get because who the hell knows if you're going to get anything good, right? Versus finding somebody who prays, right? Or whatever you're talking about, anything in the faith like that. All that stuff will be purged away. It'll all be gone at some point here. But that's really the hope. And it's through obedience, right? Through suffering. And we learn obedience through suffering. And we become these lights. We become these children. More and more that I'm in this time, the more grateful I am for the last 14 years being a pressure cooker and being really deeply uncomfortable. I don't like pain. I'm very sensitive and I do not like pain. On the other hand, I have walked through so much garbage in my life, from living in the midst of it to healing from it, that I'm faced with this situation in a whole different place. Like little hooks get in and I deal with them and move on and I'm back to a place of peace, right? And I get more and more clarity. So that's really the invitation, is we need to keep healing. Whatever is pressing you, whatever deceptions are coming, even this, somebody will listen to this and feel condemned or like I'm judging them or anything else. And there's no judgment in there from my end, nothing. I'm very happy and I'm very joy-filled that I even get the opportunity to do this. But what that might be, and discern it out, it's either the truth rubbing on something that needs to be dealt with, or I'm just full of crap. And I could be, I don't know. Time will tell. My life will bear that out one way or the other, right? Always look at the fruits. So Satan is active, he's real, and he is working this thing. You know, the whole woke culture is 100% deception. And it masquerades as love. It masquerades as altruism. It masquerades as something good. And Satan comes as an angel of light. Jesus does not. I was listening to somebody talk this morning, a pastor that I like to listen to. And he was like, ladies, do you realize Jesus was not hot? He was not handsome. He was not the guy you'd be like, oh dear, right in the middle of the crowd. That's not who Jesus was. He said he was a man of no account in Isaiah, right? A man of sorrows. He would go unnoticed. Like, God wasn't going to present himself that way because he wanted to be recognized as God. He didn't want to be adored for his flesh. He wanted to be adored for what he revealed, right? Jesus doesn't come that way. That's why Jesus makes himself known in weakness, Paul says. He makes his grace known in weakness. That's why he picked Paul, a murderer. That's why he picked fishermen who talked like fishermen and sea people. That's why he picked Judas, who was a terrorist, right? There's so many things there. Or Simon the Zealot, excuse me. A zealot is a terrorist, it's Simon. Then Judas, who betrayed him, right? He's even got fidelity to the betrayer. So even if you betrayed him, he's still faithful. He's still right there. He's still got his hand out, right? And that's what all this is. It's a time to see the light more and more and more. Through suffering, we'll learn obedience and we'll begin to reflect him and reveal him to the world. So, wow, that was kind of a long rant. So thank you very much, and I will talk to you all soon. Praying for you. Please pray for me. I need it every single day.